right, construction champions, it's your host, Ron Nussbaum, and we're here for another amazing episode of Construction Champions Podcast, where we're taking a deep dive into what does it mean to be a champion in construction every day, not just when you're on the job site, when you're building that business. Not when you're just slinging the blocks, but when you're doing the hiring and when you're looking at the accounting, what does being a champion look like? I'm excited for our guest today. We're going to get down in the weeds, I have a feeling, about how we can do some amazing things in construction. So, Ryan, it's great to have you here on the episode today.
Ron, thanks for having me. I'm excited, obviously passionate about this topic, so I can't wait to dig in.
Awesome. Well, why don't you take a minute and tell all the construction champions out there a little bit about yourself, where you came from, and what got us here to today?
Yeah, I grew up in a blue collar household. My dad was in manufacturing, and I remember him being an owner operator his whole life. And he started his own business because he wanted to have more control of his time, and he wanted to have more money, and he wanted to have all these things that a lot of entrepreneurs, that's the goal. But that never happens. And they never realize it. And they work 12-hour days, 6-7 days a week. And they never really realize that. And then they get towards the retirement age and they're like, oh, I want to sell it. And it turns out you can't sell a business that actually depends on you that much. And as I was growing up, I used to spend time with him down at the plants. And I thought that, I was hanging out with dad, but he would put me to work. And as I got older, I realized the problem was not that he was a bad entrepreneur or that it was a tough industry. The problem was that no one ever took the time to teach him how to effectively attract, hire, and retain the best people so that he could give the work to them and then step back and actually lead, which is what entrepreneurs need to be doing. And so after I went in my stint through college, I decided not to go into the family business, started my own marketing company, and wanted to really work with people on how to retain customers. But what I found was most of these people didn't need more business because they didn't have enough people to serve the customers. And so about 8 years ago, I called some of my clients and I said, hey, how about I help you with the recruiting stuff so we can get back to lead gen and all these other things that I'm good at? And they're like, I didn't know you could help with that. And I was like, I didn't know either, but let's see what happens. So I called this one contractor, home service contractor, HVAC and plumbing. And I said, hey, here's what I need. Let's go get this done. And let's see if we can get you those trucks filled. They had 4 empty trucks in their lot. They called me back 3 weeks later and they said, I don't know what you did, but we filled all 4 trucks. We got 2 more trucks on order because we found that many people to help us turn the leads back on, get things going. And I was scratching my head. Like, I don't know what I did, but it was easy and it was fun and apparently incredibly valuable to this home service contractor. So I started calling more home service contractors. Turns out all of them were in the same boat. They all were struggling with people. And, that kept me really busy in the residential space, and then eventually moved into construction, mostly on the subcontractor side, because that's where they were all struggling, whether it was plumbers or framers or mason or electricians. And so I spent a lot of time learning how to build this process to teach these businesses how to effectively attract and retain the best frontline talent.
Awesome. I love the going from one problem to the next and figuring out how you can just better service your customer, which at the end of the day for you is the construction industry. So I'm super excited for today. I'm going to try to ask the $1 million question, and that is, what makes a construction champion?
If I look at the owner level, even the leadership level, it's realizing that as a construction company, you are more in the people business than you are in the construction business. Because without people, you can't deliver your product or service. It's I think that construction is going to be one of the last industries that's really impacted by robotics or automation. Now, I know that there are some construction companies that are being able to do prefabs, and they're able to take all these finished walls and set them in place and build a house pretty much in a factory and put it out on the construction site. but getting robotics to really work in the field and being able to deal with the challenges and some of the things that come up in construction, I think we're going to see robotics start to supplement, but it'll never replace the laborer, the craft worker, that skilled professional. And so understanding that you are more in the people business than you are in the construction business is going to help not just the company, but also define you as a champion in the industry.
Yeah, I would agree that, we can't do anything great without having the right people around us and building the right teams. Now, in today's market, we hear a lot of times like it's really tight out there. I can't find the right people. I can't retain the right people. How do we overcome that?
So there's a couple of things against us right now in construction, and I'll let you pick which one we want to dig into, but we've got this issue of, we have an industry as a whole that has not changed much in the last 50 years. And there's a reputation that precedes construction and home services, contractors in general, where a lot of the modern workforce, that younger generation, their parents are not encouraging them to go into the skilled trades like they did in the 40s and 50s. Like back then, it was a well-respected job to be building the infrastructure in America. But as knowledge work became more popular and easier to get into and more sexy, if you will, I saw a lot of the parents pushing their kids towards more of the STEM and more of the knowledge work and become a developer and get into white collar jobs. And primarily that wasn't because there was just knowledge work all of a sudden. It was because the knowledge work looked more appealing. It looked like there was more opportunities. And that often is not true. You and I both know, being around construction, there's amazing careers to be had. But the perception by the general public was that these are dirty, these are not well respected. No well-respecting kid of mine is going to go be a plumber. Like, and that became the mindset of the parents. So you have a whole generation coming into the workforce now, and their parents never encourage them to get into the trades. So that's one big issue. I think the other big issue is that, again, with the rise of knowledge work, we have an industry that has not adapted. And I believe that the construction industry in whole has a mindset like the newspapers had in the 90s, where they're like, oh, the internet's not going to hurt us. Like, it's just a fad. And so they didn't adapt. And what happened? Most of the newspapers are either gone or they got acquired by someone who did adapt. And I don't see a lot of construction companies adapting to the modern workforce, which is highly technology driven. People want to come work for an employer who's paperless. They don't want to deal with fax machines anymore. I'm not kidding you. This is about 6 months ago. I came across a construction company's website. The way to apply for a job was to fax in your resume. Like, I don't know about you, but I haven't seen a fax in 20 years. I promise you, the modern workforce, the young generation doesn't even know what a fax machine is. So we have not embraced, as an industry, we've not embraced technology as it comes to recruiting our people.
I love both categories personally, but I think they're both. It's really around mindset, and I'm a firm believer that we need to have a shift in the mindset around the construction industry as the leaders to take us into the 21st century and beyond. Like,
Yeah.
we rely too much on old perceptions in the old status quo way of thinking. I think when you talk about that reputation and what people think of the construction industry, that hits home for me, because being a guy that I didn't come up in the construction industry. I went into the construction industry after the Marine Corps, and I spent over a decade and done everything from digging the hose to running the company. And I remember being at these swanky events, and people just looked at me like, oh, you're just that construction guy. And I'm running a construction company that's doing 10x the amount of revenue they would ever do at profit margins they could only dream of.
Yeah.
And to me, that hit home. Like, I was like, this isn't how it should be. Like, there's knowledge here to be had, but there's this misconception that because I work in construction, I don't know anything. And I thought that was BS. And I love, like, that's what you're addressing right there when you talk about that reputation that the industry has. I think it needs to go away. I think the backbone of America is the construction industry. There's a lot of guys running huge organizations, doing amazing things that a lot of our word and business leaders could look at and learn a lot from.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. They are both mindset. I think one, the one about adapting to technology is something that an individual construction company or contractor has more control over than the industry perception. You got guys like Mike Rowe, who's doing an amazing job of just changing the perception of these jobs in the minds of Americans. I mean, he's got a platform that I could only dream of. And he's still struggling to get that industry perception to shift. Although I don't know if you read this or not, but Mike made a big deal out of it on all his social media channels. I think it was either first quarter. I think it was first quarter of 2023. There was a 50% increase in people joining apprenticeship programs in the trades. And there was like a 12 or a 10 or 12% decrease in people going to college. So we're seeing this shift into, oh, I can go get an apprenticeship and in 2 to 4 years, I can be making 6 figures and no college debt. Like people are finally getting the memo that the industry is an amazing industry to be a part of.
Yeah, I saw those numbers, and that to me is amazing. That means we're on the right track. The story is being told in a way that brings in talent, that makes people want to be involved with that. When you talk about technology and adaptation, what do you feel the hurdles are for that? How do we get past that in the construction industry for recruiting, for just job efficiencies? Where do we go and how do we get there?
Well, I think when it comes to recruiting, you need to recognize that 90%, if not almost 100% now, of job seekers start their job search online. There's an expectation from job seekers that they're going to be able to research and find out information about the company, the leadership team, and the job before they ever have to apply. That is not a mindset that is shared with a lot of the industry. A lot of the industry is very old school, fax us your resume, shoot us an email, very little information on their website, very little information on social media. And you might have heard this before, but when it comes to the internet, if people don't see your online presence growing, they assume it's dying. And so if you are not active and actively posting about new jobs and new projects and new initiatives and new team members and all this other stuff online, and you're not sharing that information for people to learn about you and your company, they're going to make the assumption that you're not growing, that you're stagnant, that there really isn't a future either for your company or with your company. And so just embracing this idea that you need to be online, which is, I get it's completely counter to construction companies because they go build things in the real world. Right? I get it. It's tough, but making that shift and finding someone on your team to champion that initiative and say, we have to have an online presence that makes a difference and that communicates who we are and communicates it to the right people. When you do that, you're going to see a transformation in your business that you could have never imagined.
Yeah, I think we're starting to see some turn towards that, where people are opening up, especially with bigger organizations as they grow. I think they just find that it's critical to have that. You have your hand right on the pulse of this. Would you say are future candidates monitoring Facebook, Instagram, all these pages of construction companies where they might want to go work, to see, like when you talk about having posts, making stuff happen, do you think there's people out there watching it to see what's going on there?
Absolutely. It's probably not as many as there could be because there's not enough companies doing this kind of work. But you've heard this before. You probably heard this. People don't leave jobs. They leave people. They leave managers and bosses, which means when someone's looking for a new job, they're not looking to go build the same thing just for a different company. They're not looking to use their same skills and talents for just a different company. What they're looking for is a new leadership team. They're looking for a new leader. And often there's a lack of options in the construction space when it comes to getting that information online. So what they'll do is they'll go follow a company that maybe they want a contractor that they want to learn a little bit more about, just to see what it is that they share, what it is that they post. But what inevitably ends up happening, we get these little bugs and we go post for 2 or 3 weeks, all these new projects, and then we get busy working and we forget to post for a year, and it's all gone to waste. But absolutely, people are out there stalking your company, just like your customers, your clients are stalking your company. So are job seekers. You just got to make it easy for them to do it.
Yeah, it's one of the things that why I believe social media is so important, because not just from an employee standpoint, but from a customer perspective. I mean, I had guys on here that we talked to that have done millions of dollars just off their social media presence and revenue. Like, they have converted that because people want to see that. They want to know what your company's about. They want to know what you're doing. What are your values? What's a job look like? All of that stuff.
Yeah.
Customers and employees want both of it.
They do.
So how do you go about figuring out who champions that at a company when you're working with them?
Well, when we start working with a new company, the first thing we do is we get the owner on board. The owner has to be bought in and sold out to this vision of, we're going to go virtual. We're going to share who we are. We're going to define who we are. So often they haven't even done that yet. They don't even know who they are as a company yet. We're going to define who we are. We're going to put it out there. We're going to brag on ourselves to job seekers, just like we brag on ourselves to customers. And the owner has to be 100% bought in. Like, if the owner is even 90, 95% bought in, it's probably not going to work, because the second there's a hurdle, the second there's a problem, they're gonna be like, see, I told you it wasn't going to work. So if the owner's not bought in, it doesn't matter who on the team's going to do it. It's probably not going to be something that's going to run long-term. But what we often find is, if you build the right systems inside of your business, I'm sure you talk about systems and processes in construction, and you build the right systems around this stuff, a lot of it can happen automatically as just a function of doing business. And it becomes something that once those systems are built, it's almost on autopilot. Great example would be putting out, announcing new projects. You probably have a process inside of your construction company that when you win a new project, somebody in the company gets told about it. Fair? Like, somebody has to get told. There's probably a point where the high level specs of that project are communicated to a project manager or somebody. Well, they have that information. How difficult would it be to say, okay, part of your process, once you receive that information, is to grab these 4 or 5 pieces of information and send it to our social media person to post on social media announcing our new project. It becomes part of the business then. It doesn't become like this extra thing we have to do. It's just, here are the 5 things. Or heck, if you've got a social media person on staff that you trust with this information, copy them on the announcement to the project manager, and they'll pull the information they need and create social media post, for example. The thing, you probably already are communicating your projects. You're already talking about some of the cool stuff that you're building, but you're not catering it towards the job seeker. So imagine just tweaking it a little bit and saying, want to be part of a team that builds cool stuff? Like, it's the exact same thing. You just change the message a little bit. And now all those people that are stalking you online go, I want to build cool stuff, and that looks cool. I want to be a part of that.
I love that. I mean, just fit it right into the systems. Are you finding that companies are moving towards having a social media people in-house, or is that an uphill battle, I guess would be an easy way?
It's an uphill battle. So my opinion is, and I had to do this for my company, and I'm not in construction, even though that's who we serve, is I had to bring social media in-house because I'd never get someone outside of my business to care about it like I would. And it's always been a challenge. Now we have a roofing contractor that has their office manager that does it for them. Right? She's busy doing all sorts of things. She's pulled in 100 different directions, but she likes social media. And so they're like, well, instead of you being on your social media at work, be on my social media at work. And it worked out. So it's not like you have to dedicate someone to that. It's not like you're posting 27 times a day, right? That's not your business. But even posting twice a week would be a huge improvement from what a lot of these people are doing.
Yeah, I mean, going from zero to something matters. And I think all too often I'm 100% pro having somebody in-house do it. Have an understanding, cast the vision to them so you understand what the outcome you want to happen with your social media presence is, and then empower them to do that. But we tend to live in a world where, you know, there's so many ways to just ship this off, and then it just becomes a checkbox item. It doesn't become something that's authentic and on brand to who you are as a company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, interesting you talk about brands. So we do a lot of work around employer branding, which a lot of companies have heard of customer branding or branding in general. We go beyond logos and website colors and letterhead and those kinds of things. And we look at employer branding as the message that we're communicating, who we are as a company. What's our vision? Where are we going? You've probably heard the metaphor, getting the right people on the bus. Well, if you want the people to stay on the bus, they have to be excited about where the bus is going. Fair? That's your vision. If you don't know where you're going as a company 5, 10, 20 years from now, how are you going to get people to stay on the bus longer than a couple of months? The next thing is your purpose. It's why you get out of bed to do what you do every morning. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. There's probably a way to make money, more money, and easier than what you're doing. It probably doesn't matter what industry, right? And so why construction? Why home service contracting? Why get into that? Why do you do what you do? And that's important because the people that you have on your team want to get out of bed for the same reason. You want them to get out of bed for the same reason. They want to be aligned to your purpose. And then finally, your values is, how do we behave on a day-to-day? Where we're all on that bus together and we're stuck there for the next 3 years. How do we behave? How do we treat each other? Remember, people don't leave jobs, they leave people. They want to be treated differently. And I'm not saying that there's one better way or another way. They want something that they don't have right now. And so when you get really clear on those 3 things, you can create a brand that's very attractive to the right people. And that's a big focus for us. I tell business owners all the time, you said it a couple of times, they can't find anybody good. I'm like, well, stop looking for good people and start attracting good people. Like, make that shift. And if you're not attracting good people right now, I hear this all the time. Well, everybody that applies is just, they're bottom feeders. Like, they're not any good. Like, they have no right being. Well, if you're not attracting good people, it's probably because you're not attractive to good people. So if you want to attract good people, take a look in the mirror and say, maybe I should clean myself up a little bit. And maybe A players will pay attention to me a little more. But so many construction companies we work with, they have a website that looks like it was built 25 years ago. They are using a gmail.com email address. Like, they can't even spend the $12 a month to get a branded email address, right? They've got social media that doesn't have the right logo on it. And all of a sudden people are like, this place looks like a mess externally. Imagine how big of a mess they are internally. So you've got to work on your employer brand and make sure you're attractive to the right people.
I love it. That is some great information. I love the if you're attracting the bottom feeders, you know, you probably got to look in the mirror, like, because I'm big on that. Spending some time, look in the mirror, because the results that you're getting are directly correlated with you and what you're building. So, Ryan, it has been fantastic having you on the show today. Where, if people wanted to get in touch with you, where's the best places for them to do that?
Well, I'm very active on LinkedIn, but if they want more information, they can go to my website, corematters.com. And on our website, we actually have a survey that they can take. It's a real quick quiz, 14 questions, takes 2 minutes, and it spits out a report real time that tells them where the greatest opportunity is for them in being able to attract and retain the best people. So if they want to check that out, that's on my website at corematters.com. And they can sign up for that. They can get that report in real time, maybe even gives them some good information on what they need to do next.
Sounds awesome, man. Thank you for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, construction champions, what are you doing to attract the right people to your business? Not just, are they walking through the door, or are they not, but what are you doing on a daily basis? Are you investing in your social media? Are you investing in your marketing? in a way that not just appeals to your customers, but also appeals to future employees. Because as we continue to grow and we bring in more customers and we bring in and grow our businesses, we have to bring in more people to get to our end result. Ryan started out by saying, you know, we start these businesses because there's stuff we want. And I know you guys have heard me say on here many times is that the goal is to get there. It's not to be miserable and work 100 hours a week and not get the freedom, the money, or was it the vacations, or was it time with your family, or a vacation with your wife, or a new truck or a motorcycle that set you out on this journey to begin. We need to get there, and we can together by taking the stuff that we learn here twice a week on Construction Champions. It's powerful information that can be put to use immediately every week. Ryan dropped a lot of fire in here, and I suggest you go look in the mirror on what does your company look like? What does our internal branding and our external branding look like? Because that stuff does need to align. It has to be on brand, but it has to focus on two different audiences. So Construction Champions, until next time, be the champion you were meant to be.